Hello, this is Michael Vandervoort, and we're here for another episode of Drive Through HR with my co-host Robin Schooling. We are Drive Through HR, where we talk about HR technology, talent, and a bunch of other topics to keep our audience and ourselves informed. So we're happy to have you joining us for another episode. Robin, how you doing today?
I am fabulous. I am in the mood to be informed and
To be
get on top of
informed.
things. That's right.
As soon as we finish getting informed, I'm in the mood to run out the door. But my boss scheduled a meeting at 3 o'clock today, so
Boom.
holding me back from my long weekend. Anyway, so Memorial Day weekend coming up. Any plans? It's supposed to rain here.
It's going to be hot, 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 and humid, humid, humid here. So we're going to either be in the air conditioning or on the water, one or the other.
Boats or air conditioned
Yep.
pub. All right. Well, let's hope that you get to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to the 3 days off, even in the rain. But let's finish up with our guest. Let's welcome Caitlin McGregor. Caitlin, welcome to Drive Through HR. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Us too. I think it'll be a very interesting dialogue. You've got a great background. But why don't, instead of me praising you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
So my name is Caitlin McGregor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plum, and we are a technology platform that assesses your candidates and your employees' durable skills. Those transferable human skills like innovation, communication, execution. So we've disrupted the legacy psychometric assessment space that's been dominated by SHL and Hogan, and really democratized access to this highly predictive data that's 4 times more accurate than a resume at predicting on-the-job success and retention, and really created an experience where people love completing their Plum profiles and really using that as the foundation for their employee development, for their career growth, and matching people to roles where they're going to be happy, fulfilled, and thrive.
I went on your website when we booked you, and I completed the Plum profile, which when I started, I thought this is really cool. And by the time I got done, I was like, it's taking a little long because I'm just playing with it. I wasn't planning on using it, but I completed it till the end. I'm not knocking your product. I completed it till the end, and the output was fascinating. I thought that was great. So we'll probably want to hear a little bit more about that, but Robin might have a question.
Just want to know then if your hiring manager, if your manager would rehire you, because I know that's one of the things that Plum will talk about. So that's just my curiosity. But yeah, well, it'll be interesting to dive into your results, Michael. But thank you, Caitlin, so much for coming. And I actually want to go back to a comment that you made about durable skills, because that is something that Plum has talked about for a while. So explain that a little bit more, and why the emphasis on that as opposed to what we often think of as, I'm using air quotes here, traditional skills.
Yeah, so I think that it's really important that we start to recognize that there's decades of science, industrial organizational psychology, that's been really concrete evidence saying, if you take somebody, for example, with 10 years of experience and you put them against somebody, let's say with 3 years of experience, but the person with 3 years experience is a better behavioral fit. So you need somebody that's an out-of-the-box thinker, and the person with 3 years experience thrives in innovation. That's what really energizes them. That's what allows them to get out of bed in the morning excited about the work they're going to do. Innovation comes easily and naturally, and that's what really makes them fulfilled. That once they get up to speed in that job, which may take, depending on the job, 3 months, 6 months, a year, that over time, that person with 3 years experience, if they're a better behavioral fit, will outperform that person with 10 years of experience. And so we have concrete evidence that performance and that retention, which it comes back to the person is fulfilled and they're enjoying their job, comes back to these durable skills, which are those, in the industry, we've called them soft skills, but we know nobody likes that term. And the education space has really unified the explanation of durable skills versus perishable skills. So durable skills like innovation, communication, execution, they're going to endure throughout your career, regardless of the perishable skills that you utilize, and regardless of the experience that you gain, those durable skills will endure throughout your career. On the flip side, then you have the perishable skills, aka those hard skills that what you have learned on the job. And those perishable skills are learnable. They are things that take time to learn. And in the past, it often would take time to onboard somebody into a new role, for them to learn new skills. And so that was prioritized. And it was also something that people felt was measurable. And so they really prioritized the perishable skills. What's fascinating, though, if you go back to the research, is that 50% of the perishable skills that somebody gets hired for, let's say they know Python as a software developer, 50% of those, the latest research a couple years ago said that the half-life, that 50% of them would no longer be relevant in 2.5 years. So once you have hired that person 2.5 years into the role, half of those perishable skills would be no longer relevant. The latest predictions, because AI has reduced the barrier of entry, the time to learn has been dramatically reduced. We could be looking at perishable skills being irrelevant potentially in the matter of months. If you think of somebody with 10 years of marketing experience, do you want to hire somebody even now in 2025 with that 10 year of experience, or do you want to hire somebody that has innovation and communication and execution that can learn brand new ways of leveraging Gen AI in the marketing role to differentiate and stand out and be basically a clean slate? So we know that it is that behavioral alignment that is so critical, but unfortunately, because in the past it was so expensive or hard to measure or a bad candidate experience, we just over-rotated and kept focusing on those perishable skills. But you don't need to anymore. And the durable skills are more and more relevant as AI is changing the nature of our jobs.
It really is, and I don't know that it's obvious to everybody just yet. I mean, you see all these reports about how it's being used, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. So first, warning, first off the script question, just because I just realized I didn't know. How did you find your way to the idea for Plum and this space? Because it's like the work you did, like I said, I took the profile and it was fantastic. I'm just curious how you found your way there.
I built 2 businesses for other people before starting my own, before starting Plum. And it was at the second business, which was an educational software company to help students with learning disabilities succeed by using technology, assistive technology, and to excel academically. And it's really interesting because kids with learning disabilities have psychoeducational profiles. They have these really, really lengthy reports that are very hard to understand. But if you can interpret them and you can empower a 6th grader and the teacher and the parents to understand what makes that student excel and where they need to develop compensatory strategies because they're struggling, it really unlocks that entire potential of kids. And so we use these to understand the uniqueness and how to set up a kid for success. But those reports are really, really, really hard to understand. And my co-founder, Neil, who is the global expert in that software, part of his job was reading these in-depth IEPs, individual education profiles for these students, and understanding how to interpret that into common, lame language so that a 6th grader could advocate for themselves. And so what was really interesting in parallel was that our executive coach had developed a psychometric assessment while he was teaching at Harvard to generate extra income while he was doing his postdoc. He had developed an assessment that was very expensive, very hard to interpret, required, a lot of handholding, but we had the ability to use it when we started hiring for the company. And we kept finding, to make a long story short, that when we would get bombarded with resumes, that if we used this assessment on absolutely everybody, we kept having these diamonds in the rough surface to the top. People we never would have brought forward for the interview if it hadn't been for the assessment saying they were the perfect behavioral fit. And so we were our first customer. We spent 3 years screening in these incredible people with potential and seeing them thrive in jobs where they had never had prior experience, but they were quickly top performers in the role. And having built 2 businesses for other people, having understood the importance of translating this really in-depth psychological data into practical terms, we saw an opportunity to, really take this industrial organizational psychology data out of the hands of really expensive consultants and marry it with software as a service, create a user experience where individuals loved completing their Plum profile and more importantly, loved the results that they got, and that there was an opportunity to make it intuitive and make it scalable so that you could have a universal assessment. Doesn't matter what role somebody is applying to, doesn't matter if they're a candidate or an employee, one source of truth to really quantify durable skills and go with somebody throughout their career. Really the idea of like LinkedIn, but not based on what somebody had done historically, based on what they could do if given the opportunity, and that it would stay with them. And that really user-centric approach of how do we empower the individual with their own data. So we just saw this really outdated legacy assessment industry but saw this incredibly powerful science and thought that there was a user experience and a technology and a scalability problem that we could solve by really staying to the best in class industrial organizational science, but then modernizing the rest of the experience.
Can you share an example besides your own your predecessor employer where focusing on durable skills led to a significant positive outcome for an organization?
Yeah, I think one of the best case studies that we have that is really around high volume hiring, and especially high volume hiring with early careers. We know that 18 to 28-year-olds, Gen Z, they are leveraging AI and applying by the thousands now to roles, and being able to differentiate between them and know who to shortlist to bring into that structured interview just seems like an impossible feat. And so our customers are using us on every single candidate after they've uploaded their resume into their system. They're completing their Plum profile. They're being matched to the behavioral needs of the role, and that's using it to then shortlist and decide who to bring into that structured behavioral interview. And so our customer, Scotiabank, they were ahead of the curve, and they really saw an opportunity, especially with campus recruitment, where they realized that there wasn't really a need to continually focus on what university or college they were graduating from or what degree they had. So historically, they would only hire from 5 elite universities, and they would only hire business and finance graduates. And what would happen is that was the exact small pool of talent that all the other banks and professional services organizations were competing against. So when they would send all these cycles and they'd finally get to the offer stage, they were getting outbid by their competition. So they said, okay, we're going to do something bold that no one else is doing. And they made the commitment to eliminate resumes for all their campus hires and instead have people apply with their Plum profile. And so what we can do is say, hey, this person applied to be a financial analyst. They're only a 35 match, but they're a 95 for commercial banking because of their execution and decision-making and conflict resolution and these behaviors that they're going to really utilize and succeed in. And so now they can go to that candidate and say, hey, I know you were thinking about financial analyst, but we think you'd be amazing in commercial banking, and here's why, and then can interview them based on those behavioral questions. And so it allowed them to screen in people that they weren't ever looking at before. So now they hire from 33 different colleges and universities. 40% of their hires are STEM and arts backgrounds, and they increased their hiring of underrepresented minorities to 60%. And by screening in all these people that they weren't looking at previously, they've doubled retention.
Wow.
So really great impact when you change the metric that you're looking at, especially in that really hard to evaluate one person over another in high volume early.
Ooh, I love the thought of getting rid of resumes once and for all. That day that we always talk about that will
a lot of our customers still use the resume, but it's after the fact. It's kind of it's a second step. It's not the first step. It's after you've already said, okay, let's look at the data that's 4 times more accurate at predicting performance and retention. Let's shortlist based off of that. And then we'll go through and double check. Just like you want to double check if you need somebody to come into an office, you check, do they live geographically close? You know, but it becomes a secondary thing. You don't start right away by looking at, you don't do background checks right off the top on thousands of people. You do it later. So the resume has some information. The problem is we've over relied, and now most technology is just keyword matching and keyword inference. And this is why it's so important to measure this, because 80% of job descriptions say they want somebody with high communication. 100% of resumes, people say they have high communication. But to actually be able to assess it and realize, no, of these 1,000 applicants or several hundred applicants, these are the ones that are exceptional with communication. These are the ones that this is the thing that they're going to outproduce their peers in the quantity and efficiency and productivity around communication than their peers. And so to be able to put that objective measurement into the equation that's backed by predictive science that does not discriminate against any protected groups, that, everybody has areas that drive them and energize them and areas that drain them and are opportunities for development. And there is nothing when it comes to personality and cognitive ability and matching it to the behavioral roles that discriminates against any protected group. You don't have to worry about AI self-learning and prioritizing people that live closer in geography because they tend to stay longer, but actually you're now introducing socioeconomic bias into the equation. And we go to the lengths of ensuring that we have a third-party audit done every year to publicly demonstrate how we have the validity and the no adverse impact. And we take this component incredibly seriously because it is a science. It's not just, we're going to go ahead and do a bunch of keyword matching and inference and hope for the best.
We're about 17 minutes into the show, which means we're a little bit more than halfway done. Our guest is Caitlin McGregor. I'm Michael Vandervoort. My co-host, Robin Schooling, is here. Let's pivot from durable skills to culture and strategy. Robin, you want to grab the next question?
Yeah. So, Caitlin, recently there was a Forbes article talking about how aligned culture can act as a force multiplier.
I love all these jargon words, by the way.
I know, but I like that terminology, though, the force multiplier. Tell us a little bit about that and specifically how you've found that organizations can ensure that their culture is aligned with their business strategy.
This comes down to a similar concept where you can't manage what you don't measure, which is a common, phrase that we say. This is an opportunity, just like we assess durable skills for every single candidate and employee, because we're already interacting with the employees and they've completed their Plum profile. We have a really short 7-minute assessment that you can give employees to assess your company culture. And it's not your engagement survey. It's not asking about whether or not you have a best friend at work. It's trying to understand what actually shows up in practice every day currently, and then gives the opportunity for the employee to input, in an ideal world, what would they like to see show up in practice as the company culture. And we're measuring the gap between what does the culture show up in practice in terms of demonstrable priorities today, and ideally where would people like it to be. And this is really critical because every single organization is at danger of repeating what they've done in the last 5 years. If they're going to use the same strategy that they've used for the last 5 years, they're going to be left out in the next blockbuster. They're going to be irrelevant. So every executive team right now is under pressure to set a new strategic direction, which is the North Star of the business. And in order to successfully succeed in implementing that new strategy, you need every single person in your company to be rowing together in the same direction. And so it might be really nice to say, hey, we all need to be more innovative, or we need to have better collaboration. But if you measure it in just 7 minutes and you realize that A, that's not your current state, and B, by the way, you don't actually have buy-in, that's what people think needs to happen, then why not in advance understand and measure that, so then you can understand where the gaps are. And the sooner that you fill those gaps, that you create that proper alignment, you're going to be able to get to your objectives, get to your strategic endpoints faster than the competition. And so it's about recognizing that once you actually measure your company culture, the next step is then asking, let's say we are aligned that we need to be more innovative. And let's say we need, better transparency in order to do that. And we need to be less risk adverse. The question is where are the people in your organization to be the early adopters inside your organization, to lead that charge, to show people what success in this new direction looks like? Because we have the durable skills data of all your employees, we can say, hey, it's actually these executives, it's these managers, it's these individual contributors, it's these departments, it's these geographies that are your best early adopters that can get out ahead. And these people are going to be your fast followers or your laggards, your late adopters. And so don't put your efforts into one size fits all, getting your late adopters to, adopt all these new things right away. Let them follow after they've seen success from your early adopters. So the ability to truly align your people, and then you can go one step forward and step further and say, okay, we're so committed to employee development. This is a thing that does not seem to be going away. It's still a priority for companies, but they're lost at how to effectively do employee development. What's the right investment? What's the right way to do it? How do we personalize it, but still make sure it aligns to what the company needs? Well, you can, once you know what your North Star is, every single Plum employee can see how they align to that company culture naturally, what drives them about the company culture and what's draining. So you can tailor the development of your employees towards your company culture but you want to make sure that it's measured and you understand where there are gaps. So there's going to be need for more resources, more emphasis, more change management, and certain areas where you already have buy-in. So go full steam ahead and use that as a way to get encouragement from others. So it's this understanding that the culture plays an incredibly important role in change, but the more you can measure it and then align it to people's empowerment and development, the more it can really be, as you said, that force multiplier that can help companies succeed through this transition period.
Given time's getting tight, and I do definitely want to spend a little time on AI since it's the magic word of our cultures these days. I'm going to grab two questions and combine them. You mentioned in the article, you talk about the idea of cultural dexterity, which sounds like I think I get what that means, but talk about that quickly and then what to do if organizations identify misalignment. And I think you already touched on some of that already anyway.
Yeah, I think it's the recognition that, this top-down model is outdated. To set an objective completely independent of the reality of the situation that your employees are living in and independent of the understanding of the amount of change management that's needed, that doesn't work. There is enormous amount of change management that's needed in every organization right now. By rooting it in data, you can understand how much change management or not is needed. And there's a little bit of openness to say, I can't just pound my fist and say, well, we're all going to march in this direction and hope that everybody follows. So there's a little bit of openness to say, okay, what are your employees saying they need in order to execute on this new strategy? And a lot of the times it surprises people. There's a couple things in there that the data reveals that were not at all on their radar. So for example, there's always a scapegoat or, there's this narrative inside the organization. Oh, it's that generation that we're having a problem with, or it's that geography, or it's that department. And I've seen mergers of departments, either by new organizations coming in or literally flattening the organization by combining departments. And sometimes it's that actually the two departments are incredibly aligned. They're actually completely bought into being one department and moving ahead. It's actually the leaders that have the disconnect, that the leaders between the two departments are the ones that can't agree on the new direction. But instead of the leaders debating on should it be this direction or that direction, if they just looked at the combination of the two employee bases, they have their strong answer. Everybody wants to go in this direction. So you can fight it, which is fine, but put resources, put change management in it. Or they can just lean into where those two departments already feel aligned and already want to go and use that to settle kind of the egos between the two different sets of leaders. And so that's an example of, there were all these narratives of where the problems were, but the data was really, really clear where the gap was. You always have the choice to say, well, that's fine that there's a gap. We're still going to go in this direction, but to then properly resource it, to properly set timelines. You're not going to get a company to do a 180 in a 3-month time period. But if they're already bought in and excited, yeah, you could have real milestones 3 months in so that you have early wins and you get people really motivated. So it's just recognizing that, this is critical as companies are changing new directions, and it can't just be that top down, do it because I say so. There has to be that bottoms up understanding of the employee's experience and where the employee's arriving and how much they need to develop or change or be empowered or work in a new direction in order to succeed in this new alignment.
That leads us right to what I'm thinking of as kind of a good closing question, right? All of these things we've talked about today and the things that you're working on at Plum and the conversations you're having. When we think of the evolving way of work, the evolving workplace, the future of work, whatever buzzword we want to use, what are your, top couple of pieces of advice for organizations in terms of how they can future-proof their organizations in this rapidly changing world that we're in now?
I think there's a couple of things. One is, if we think back to when the desktops first landed in companies, you could choose to be a company that says, yeah, we're going to buy a bunch of desktops and we're going to train a bunch of people on it. And that's going to be where we're making our investment. And then you can think of when the first wave of smartphones came out. You could let your competition give smartphones to their sales team, to their finance team, to their marketing team, or you could decide that none of your employees have smartphones. We have that decision right now. The difference is the time to adopt. We don't have 5 to 10 years to adopt desktops. We don't have, 2, 3 years to adopt smartphones. We have months at this point.
Yeah.
So recognizing that the best way that adults learn and create a new normal is by adopting the new technology in their day-to-day practices and allowing them to experiment to understand how it works in practice. So things that we've done at our company, for example, and these are really small things that everyone at a bare minimum, I believe, should do. Most companies have subscribed to either their own type of generative AI or they're going out and purchasing. Our company, every team member has a ChatGPT from OpenAI's team license. So it's $20 a month per employee. And we have made it so that everybody on their desktop and on their desktop toolbar, right beside that Chrome browser or right beside their email browser, they have the OpenAI ChatGPT, icon. So it's a click away. On the home screen of people's phones, right beside their web browser, is their ChatGPT icon. And instead of that habit of, hey, I'm just going to Google that, we're encouraging that habit of go and ChatGPT it because you get different results.
Yep.
Instead of going in and typing into ChatGPT or using voice to text, use the dialogue. Have a conversation with it. If you are struggling with a problem, treat it like a therapist. Have a back and forth conversation where you're not even looking at the text and you're just having that conversation. Experiment with video, experiment with imaging, experiment with different forms that if we were going to in the past create a PowerPoint presentation or we were going to create a report, is there a way of doing that in a completely different way from start to finish using ChatGPT? A big part of it is how do we normalize this as whatever you were doing in your job for the last 5-10 years, assume that it's not the most efficient and practical way and have the courage to say that that's not the best thing for my career and that's not the best thing for the company to keep doing it that way. So try to imagine all of us as being clean slates and how can we rebuild from the ground up how to do our functions using these new tools. And then recognizing that, again, back to those early adopters, there are certain people that this is what's going to get them out of bed in the morning. This is what's going to really energize them. They are excited by this as an opportunity. And there are other people that are going to be so scared that they're almost in a fight or flight mode. So partner them, let them see how others are experimenting. Let's use the mentorship to say, hey, I did these 3 things. Let me screen share with you. What are you working on? How can I talk you through using this as well? How do you celebrate those new wins? How do you do, peer learning? We've got a really funny way of when we do socials online. We had a baby shower. Well, we all did a baby shower book together online, and because of the time constraint, every team had to use ChatGPT because there's no way we could have created an entire baby book in 15 minutes. Then we had a bridal shower where we created recipes for this person who loved baking. Every team to use ChatGPT, so they're in a group. So you've got different strengths in that group. You come together and you share the results of each group to create this collective thing. The amount of learning we all did with this really silly, fun, low risk thing. These are the type of things that we need to reimagine how we are creating a new normal and look at adult learning and look at leveraging people's strengths, be it innovation or communicating the new ways of doing things or the team building. These are all durable skills that can be leveraged into helping an organization advance when it comes to adopting AI.
I love this conversation, and I love the topics that we've covered because they're like the keys to success for a business. It's like aligned culture, resiliency, right person, right seat is what we call it here where I work.
Exactly.
Right, but durable skills or skills allowing people to be the most successful, innovation, early adoption. These are so critical, and yet many companies seem to fight them. And we don't have time to continue on because we're already over time. But I want to give you, with that in mind, and give you a chance to answer 2 quick questions. Any final thoughts, and then tell people where they can find you and Plum.
I just want to thank you for having me. This was a great conversation and very timely. And then people can go to plum.io and they can complete their own Plum profile at no cost. It's completely free for job seekers and for employees to use on their own. So go create your own Plum profile like Michael did and figure out what drives you and drains you, and use the language to advocate so that you can be happier and more fulfilled in your roles.
I forewarn our listeners a lot about 15 minutes and be prepared to answer some spatial puzzle questions. I was like, my head was exploding, not to give away but it was fun. Thanks so much, Caitlin, for doing this. Robin, have a great Memorial Day weekend. In Canada, you had Victoria Day last weekend, right?
Yes.
So I won't wish you another long weekend, but it was great to have you on, Caitlin, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Bye,
Robin.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.